Maybe I wasn't plugged in all the way, so I'll back out and go for it again. Tell me if I would need to do that again. We started talking about enjoying being in the parables. And Matthew, of course, is the great source of parables. Some of the synoptic gospels include them. So in other words, Mark and Luke also include some of them, but not all of them. And last week I took from Mark because it's one of the longest pieces that he does, and I wanted to give the harmony of the gospel a little exercise. I'll go out and start again, Tim. That has made a difference sometimes. But we're back to Matthew because Luke has a shorter piece and puts it somewhere else, and Mark doesn't cover it at all. So we're going to look at the parables. I said it last week, I like this description of it, truth hidden in plain sight. Jesus used real practical illustrations to illuminate his message, his teaching. We saw that last week. And so that's what we'll look for today. And just as a quick reminder, previously, last week we looked at the parable of the sower, the seed, and the soil. Maybe you remember something about it. I have to say that throughout the week, I have the benefit of the preparation, the time that goes into the preparation, and throughout the week it continues to resonate, percolate, and I marinate in it. And oftentimes it points out some things to me, the Word of God, that He said will not return void without accomplishing its purpose. He has a purpose for His Word in me to make me more like His Son. And the same for you. So I hope you also have, Holy Spirit has to do the work. But you have to be sensitive and tuned in order for it to have its effect on you. And so the word character came up about shallow character for the seed that fell on the stony soil, on the gravel. And I thought about, Kevin, what kind of character do you have? Because it was sort of nudging me and saying, you know, that's not deep character there, that stuff. And certain other things, they resonate, and this is what's really important, because we can think about all of these messages being from the Bible about them and those people. James says it's like a mirror. The Word is like a mirror, and you hold it up in front of your face, but many of us are like the man who walks away and forgets what he just saw. So it's meant to communicate to us so that God's Word will not return to Him void, empty. Which way does this go? This week, we're looking at the parable of the sower, and it begins like this. Then Jesus told them, if you can't understand the meaning of this parable, how will you understand the other parables? So this parable in this series of parables is the foundational one, where the sower, God is planting seed on the heart, on the soil. He's looking for a return on his investment. He's very extravagant. Every soil has a chance. Not all will respond, not all can sustain, not all will support. But I put this up here so that we will go into going to have 3 parables today. They're all connected, but these 3 are really closely bound together. And remember, they're building on this first one. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The harmony of the Gospels comes from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This one today comes from Matthew, the parable of the weeds in the field. I call it the parable of the sower, the seed, and not the soil, the saboteur. Because we're going to look at what Jesus calls his enemy. Well, what's a saboteur? I wanted to I wanted to get that out there. It's a person who destroys or damages something deliberately. A person who performs sabotage. An example is that the car's tires were slashed by saboteurs. You get the picture? The soil, the seed, and the saboteur is what we'll look at today. So, which one is counterfeit? Because that's what we're looking at. The saboteur plants counterfeit, introduces counterfeit. Can you tell which is which? They have a little ink stick that somehow or other miraculously can identify that when you hand a $100 bill across the counter. But which one is which? Okay, the one on top is not, the one on the bottom is. I would have accepted either one of them gladly. And look at all the other things. I didn't break this down and animate it, but you've got the Chanel No. 5, very expensive perfume, but there are knockoffs for it. You've got the Rolex type of watches. You could have one. Somebody will open up their trench coat, and they've got a whole string of them. Or the iPhone, or the handbag, or the tennis shoes. There are the fake and there are the real, and we're looking at counterfeits today, sown by the saboteur, the enemy of God. The parable of the weeds in the field. I'm going to play a video that is a great rendering of it, not too long. Actually, I've got several video pieces inserted in here today for your viewing pleasure and to help make the point. The parable of the weeds in the field. It's going to be the seed and the weed. We're going to see the mustard seed and we're going to see the leaven. Jesus speaks on each one of those. So here's our little video.
He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?' He said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' So the servant said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and gather them?' But he said, 'No, lest in gathering the weeds you should root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed that a man took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is larger than all the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches." He told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. All these things Jesus said to the crowds in parables. Indeed, he said nothing to them without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. "I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples came to him, saying, "Explain the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear.
I like the chosen Jesus, and I like this Jesus, and there's one or two other I like, but I thought this was delivered well. And so let's review, though, because he covered all of that rather quickly, just as Jesus laid it out. And if you imagine, if it played out like it's recorded in Matthew, he's gone offshore in a boat because the crowds are mobbing him and actually almost pushing him into the water. And so there's a boat standing by. He pushes off the shore, and he's delivering these parables to them. Really appears to be one after the other because he wants to build a big, comprehensive picture of what the kingdom of heaven is like. And I think it's important for us to not look at the kingdom of heaven as simply a when-then thing, but he says the kingdom is with you. The kingdom is here and now and yet to come. And so there's something in here for us to be aware of in the here and now so that we're better set and prepared and included in the kingdom yet to come. So, following along, you don't have this in your handout. There just isn't enough room, so you can follow along up here or in your own Bibles, Matthew 13, 24 through 30. Jesus put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping," that just jumped out to me. It's not repeated as he explains it, but it jumped out to me, having the larger context in mind. While we were all asleep, while the church was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. Reminds me right now, just occurs to me and went away, that when in the temptation in the wilderness that Satan tempted Jesus, Jesus deflected all of it, and then it says Satan went away for a more opportune time. And Satan went away. He did his dirty work and he went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?" The second batch of seed that we bought for our lawn wasn't the same as the original batch, and I swear it had some weed seed in it. You don't expect that, but there was things. I couldn't think of the word last week, Bruce, knot grass. It's that grass that has deep roots, and when you try to pull it up, everything else pulls around it, or you tear it off and the roots are still intact, like tentacles. I had to get rid of a lot of that. "Master, did you not plant good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?" He said to them, "An enemy has done this." So the servant said to him, "Then do you want us to go out and gather them?" But he said, "No. Lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." They say to him, "Explain to us the parable." Now, in your Bibles, this doesn't occur until later. He gives two more parables in succession before he explains it. In fact, it says he went into the house. So they're done there at the beach, and he goes back in the house, and that's when the disciples, just them, say, hey, would you explain that to us? We need a little help. We want to make sure we really get what you were saying. It's kind of cryptic. We understand weeds, we understand sowers, we understand fields, but you're using the same thing again. Help us with it. He answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. Now I think this might be in your hand. And yeah. Now we're getting to the handout. Jesus is explaining it. So here's what you should write in. He said, what did he say? He said, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. Now who's the Son of Man? Jesus. The field is the world. This is different than previously. The field, the soil, was the hearts of men previously. But this seed is not that. That's from the previous parable, and so we always need to be attentive. We always need to look into it. I depend on commentaries. I depend on other people's messages to help me with what I don't see. It's like asking Jesus, what did you mean by that? I'm not above needing help. Oh, here's what he says. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. Now that's what he said previously. Is it? Yeah, that's from previously. That's from the first one, I think. Pardon me, because we're talking about the heart here. That's how that would catch my eye. What have I done? I'll probably mix some slides up. But here's a good slide for you. Here's a good slide for you. I'm going to go back. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. And Jesus said, I will build my church. Whose church? His church. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The evil one comes and wants to snatch the word away from our heart, but Jesus says that's not going to stop what I'm here to do, what I intend for you to be about. The good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. He said, I had true believers. You can write that in. True believers are good seed planted in human hearts. Now that's from the previous sower, seed, and soil parable. But we take it with us here because it helps us to understand this. Here he's going to talk about the weeds. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. The enemy who sows them is the devil. The devil, the weeds that the devil sows, the enemy sows, they're demonic fallen angels. They are in that invisible realm where the battle in the heavenlies rage. They are the fallen angels. They're rebellious scoffers. Let's bring it down to earth. They're unbelievers. They're false prophets. Jude has warned us about this. The half-brother of Jesus. We looked at what Jude had to say a couple of weeks ago, and he warns us about this, echoing Peter's words from 2 Peter chapter 2. Number 3 in your handout, this will give you a picture of Satan in what he's talking about here. Satan is the original and perpetual master of all counterfeits. All counterfeiters. He's the master of all counterfeiters. He's the original and perpetual master of all counterfeit. When he can't snatch away God's word, he plants counterfeits in the midst of the true believers. The church Jesus said he is building. That's where that next slide is supposed to be. I will build my church. My church. Jesus said, I will build my church. That's the midst of the true believers. Not this building whatsoever. The gathering of people, that's the church. And there is a worldwide church where we're all brothers and sisters. This is good. It's going to help us to see the difference.
There once was a farmer who sowed good seed on good ground. But while he slept, an enemy came and sowed tares in among the wheat. Now, a tare is a poisonous weed which looks a lot like wheat in its early stages. If eaten by a person or an animal, nausea would occur, convulsions, and in certain circumstances, even the possibility of death. This was a spiteful act of malice. The enemy had nothing to gain except to ruin the wheat crop of the farmer. Some of the farmer's hired workers came and asked him why he did not sow good seed into his fields. Look at all these weeds, they said. But the farmer replied, an enemy did this. Then the workers asked if they should remove the tares and leave the wheat. To this the farmer said no. It's easier to tell the difference at harvest time. Besides, if we remove the tares now, we risk ripping up the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. At that time, I will tell the workers, first collect the weeds, tie them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. Matthew 13:43. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear.
He goes on to say that the harvest is the end of the age. Pardon the overlap there. Something slipped out of the column and got into the presentation, where it says the harvest is the end of the age, and I've inserted the word church. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of the church age. That's this dispensation we live in between Pentecost and the rapture. It is the dispensation of grace, where we live under God's grace by virtue of Jesus Christ's death on the cross, Him paying the price for us. The harvest is the end of the church age, when Jesus will return to establish His millennial kingdom, and the harvesters are angels. I call them God's elite special forces. Yeah, guys like Michael, guys like Gabriel, and a lot of other very powerful servants of God that surround Him day and night. All the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the church age, when Jesus comes to establish His millennial kingdom. I'm going to borrow a piece here from Paul that's going to tell us a bit more about this masquerading, this usurper, this counterfeiter, this, what's that word?
Saboteur.
Saboteur. I got to look at my own notes. The saboteur. It's going to tell us a little bit about it. Paul knows who we're talking about. He says, for such people, now we're talking about in the earthly realm, are false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. They're just a chip off the old block. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that bad apple. Well, here's what's going to happen. The Son of Man will send out His angels, and they will weed out His kingdom, everything that causes sin and all who do evil. No more leaven. We're talking about the millennial kingdom. The millennial kingdom, where Satan has been bound and thrown into the abyss for 1,000 years to prevent him from continuing to deceive the nations. That's kingdom life, where we will where we'll shine like the sun. That's what He's going for. In Revelation, talking a bit more about that time, I needed to check myself, because you can get confused in your eschatology, but it says here, in case you want a proof text, and I saw an angel come down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. Well, the weeds will be thrown into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Nobody wants that. No, you know, Jesus talks more about hell than heaven, but you know what? In the beginning, it says, the very first words of the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth. Not God created heaven and hell. He created the heavens and the earth. It wasn't until the fall of Satan, and who knows how the chronology works in there, but hell was prepared for Satan and his legions. Was not the plan for us. We were put in a garden under God's care. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. That's what the millennium will be like for us. That's what God has us planted here to be sure that's where we're going. And then he says, he who has ears, he repeats this, let him hear. And he goes right from there into another parable. It's the parable of the mustard seed. And he told another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. This is a good thing. The man wants to grow some mustard, so he takes a mustard seed and plants it in his field. Though it is the smallest of all your seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree. This has also been associated with faith. Faith as small as a mustard seed. If you have this kind of faith, not quantity, tiniest little bit of faith, you can say to this mountain in metaphoric language, I'm pretty sure, throw yourself into the sea and it'll be done for you. In other words, the big mountains in your life, the insurmountables, you can set aside by faith. So what do we have here? We have a little seed. The man wanted to grow mustard. He planted it in the ground. It grew up, and Jesus is saying, and you know how that mustard seed goes, it becomes the largest of garden plants. It becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and perch in its branches. I inserted this little piece here because this sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It sounds pretty good. Man plants some seed, puts it in the ground, wants mustard. It's his seed of faith. It grows up to be a big thing, and even the birds come. I love birds. I love to watch the birds around my house. But here's where I'm going to affirm what Andy said. We're going to look at it from a little bit of a different angle than that. Because
not special.
because that's where we might go away with it. Isn't that special? It grew up into a big tall tree and the birds came and nested in it. Isn't that special? Weird and wonderful bird dances. I'm going to affirm birds. Here's the greater bird of paradise. Doing a little dance. Who's that guy?
That's the female.
Thank you.
There we go. All right. A marriage made in heaven. Here's the red cap mannequin. Yeah. The black-footed albatross. Okay. I hate to spoil this for you, but here's where we're going with this. In parabolic imagery, in the parables, in the imagery used in the parables, birds can represent the works of the evil one. 'Twas birds, was it not, that snatched up the seed of his word in verse 4? Wasn't it the birds? The seed fell on the path, and the birds came and snatched it up. Sounds like a diabolical action associated with the birds. Birds can be counterfeiters dispatched by Satan to infiltrate and occupy the same space in the world where God has planted true believers. These birds can be counterfeiters that Satan sends out, and I'm going to give you some pictures of that. Don't park your car in there. Looked like an Alfred Hitchcock piece.
Are those grackles?
That's what they are.
I think they're grackles.
Grackles. Yeah. Ah, that accomplishes the purpose there. Believers grow to maturity. I didn't put a number on this. You have a number for it? Believers grow to maturity? Number 4. Or no, yeah, it's part of 4. Believers grow to maturity in good soil. The good soil of faith. But then they attract noisy, distracting birds. So God plants good seed in good soil. Believers then, which represents the believers that grow in faith. But then, where they assemble, they also attract some very noisy, distracting birds. Have you noticed? You know, there are a lot of really large churches, and there are a lot of churches, large and small, where there's a lot of noise and distraction from the main thing, the main point. And they love attracting attention to themselves. Noisy. They're noisy and distracting. Where are they? They're there. Oh, here they come. Here comes some more. Okay, well, you got the picture.
That was the birds, not wind?
Huh?
That was the birds, not wind?
That was the birds, and there's birds. There was a whole flock coming. There were more. They're also attracted to the noise. And I don't know if you've ever been a part of a church where that's going on, and there's confusion, and there's an absence of peace and tranquility. There's an absence of purpose. We get distracted by the gossip, by somebody else's something and our own, and we're missing the main point. And so now he goes right from there. Where have we been? We've been to the sower, the seed, and the saboteur. We've gone to the mustard seed, where we see a little tiny grain of mustard seed planted that becomes a big tree that attracts these birds. He goes right from there to the parable of the leaven. Parable of the leaven, Matthew 13:33. Remember, they were in sequence, and he goes to explain afterwards what I already explained up front to keep things consolidated. Parable of the leaven. He told them still another parable. Jesus wants to get a certain point across, doesn't he? And he's framing it in lots of different ways so that the hearer, if you didn't get that one, maybe you'll get this one. Maybe a woman would get this one more easily. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour. It's a large amount of flour, till it was all leavened. What's that mean? What did she put in there? What do we call it? Yeast. Yeah, and you know what happens? You put some yeast in the bread, and you put it in the warm sunshine, and it grows up. It becomes a big thing. Then the unleavened bread, like the matzah and certain other things, that never happens. But we need to recognize this. In Bible imagery, leaven represents sin. And Satan only needs to introduce a smidgen of sin, introduce it in with the fruitful harvest of wheat that's been ground for food to overwhelm and dominate the whole bunch. This little bit of leaven, this smidgen of sin goes a long way. It's the point he's making. Gals, you know what happens when you put yeast in your dough. It rises, it takes over. It overwhelms it in a sense. It dominates the whole batch. So the central point of this, remember, I said that parables have a central point. They may be made up of various other aspects, but there is a central point to these three parables, and it illustrates that Satan is an enemy, a saboteur who plants counterfeit believers in the church that Jesus Christ is building. Winston Churchill said this, I captured it. He says, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. I love that. It's taken over. Everybody's looking over there at the lie. And you know, you only have to, we see it there in the garden of, in the wilderness where the devil just tips the word of God a little bit. And the truth is so close. The lie is so close to the truth it can be indistinguishable. That's counterfeit.
That's more true today than ever.
So true. So true, because it comes from all different directions. It's instantaneous. I saw a thing on 60 Minutes where, and I've known this was coming, where they can take the voice. The example was Tom Cruise. They took a guy that looked like Tom Cruise. They shaped the head and face digitally, so it was a good knockoff. And then they took his voice and they put it in his mouth. It wasn't Tom Cruise.
It's a deep fake.
Huh?
Deep fake.
A deep
Yes.
fake.
A deep fake, yeah. And one point then to my illustration is that one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. So, what are we supposed to do with this? I didn't fill in the last part of it, so I'm going to work it old school here by hand. What are we supposed to do with this? It's what I said earlier. The servants are instructed to let the wheat and the tares grow together. We might think, well, we better get busy, take action. We see that there's some kind of a thing here in the church, and we don't trust it, we don't like it. We could be wrong, but we're going to go and tear it up. We're going to throw that out. But he said, why does he say don't do that? You'll tear up the good with the bad. Leave that. And then you can get it later. Is that what he said?
It's not your job.
No, he said the angels are the harvesters. It's a divine action. And we feel compelled. We feel like, well, we should get busy. Jesus is coming. There's something we have to do. And so we go out and we become the morality police. We want to pass laws that will forbid certain things. And Jesus says, no, you're going to destroy some good things in the process. Let them grow together and leave that for me. Well, doesn't that make us feel kind of helpless and irresponsible? In light of what Jude said, especially, his one message seemed to be contend for the faith. When the false teachers come into the church, when that bad seed is infiltrating, you must contend for the faith. That doesn't mean you tear up everything and throw it out. And we talked about this. I think we have to be tactful in doing so, in contending for the faith. And so I took it home with me. Kevin, how are you contending for the faith? And I can think of incidents where someone will say something and it doesn't come across right. To me, it's not by the biblical standard that I understand, and I can address that. I try not to make an enemy by doing it, but to be tactful about it. Hopefully they can hear that. But okay, beyond that, when it comes my way, how am I how am I taking the initiative to contend for the faith? And it made me think, well, how are you communicating with your son who would position himself as an unbeliever, even though he has grown up in the faith? How would you communicate with him? And so yesterday was a great example. We're sitting down after a good work day, and we're on the patio and we're just chatting. And I'm telling him about my message, and I'm saying, hey, Tyson, can you think of some birds you really think are bad birds? And it didn't come to mind real quick for him. I'm saying, my brother hated starlings because starlings were noisy nest robbers. And so he always had a .22 go out to get the cows and shoot a starling or two. Starlings, he hated starlings. My son, Darren, hates mockingbirds. I listened to him out here and I love it. This bird's got more songs. He says, yeah, but they don't sleep at night. And one parks outside my window, and he's a very, very light sleeper. And it makes noise all night long, and they could even imitate a car alarm. He says, you get a mockingbird here, because I was thinking about importing one. He says, I'm not coming anymore. He hates mockingbirds. Does anyone have an unfavorite bird? An unfavorite, the least favorite bird. Blue jays, yes. They can be a real pain. They're big and bulky. They drive away the other birds that come to my feeder. Crows are annoying too.
The baby birds of other birds.
They can be annoying.
They're just,
Yeah. So, all right, I'm just bringing you, Tyson, did you have a particular bird that would come to mind that I can use in this illustration? And so I get to tell him about my message. And we get to move on into other things, other aspects of it, explaining what the intent of the message is. And I find him doing what Jesus is saying. He who has ears, listen. He's listening. And so I feel like I'm tactfully contending for the faith. I'm opening a door. I'm building a bridge. We can talk about these things. It's a mustard seed being planted that I'm looking for a harvest. For anyone who does the 24/7, there's always a place at 24/7, what do we call it? Lectio. Yeah. Anyone who does that, there's always a place for you to bring it down to earth. And who do you know that you can pray for in the context of what's just been discussed? And that's what we need to do. Where does this land for me? What am I going to do with it? And so often my family comes to mind. Right here, close to home. Work on that one. Well, here we are, at last. Here we are. Have you learned anything? Have you gained anything? Have you learned anything? Have you gained anything? Is there any place for this to land for you?
Yeah.
Any fresh insight? Cheryl, I'll take no credit for it.
Good. No, I was just thinking of what Oscar said about coming to church here and what has been helpful to him about Bible study. And when you said contend for the faith, I thought I need to contend for the faith in and of myself because of the things that come at you and bombard you, whether it's life or whether it's the news or whatever that that you deal with on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And like the rest of the group, contending for the faith and having the fellowship of like believers is very, very fruitful for me.
Yeah. And that contending for the faith is okay. Where am I deviating? Where am I not acting in faith? Am I using my own, I want God's blessing, but am I going around the other way to get it?
Exactly.
I want what I want, and so if I don't see him delivering it fast enough, I'm going to go get it.
When I was in high school, I picked strawberries for 2 years to make my movie money. And I remember even the beautiful strawberries that we have in this valley, which are so delicious, if you do not go out there and weed them, you're going to have very weedy, not very good strawberries. So for me, this message hit home in that you can have the beautiful word, but if the, what is the word again? Not the deceptor?
Oh,
The counterfeiter. Counterfeiter?
counterfeiter, yeah, the saboteur.
Saboteur.
Saboteur, yeah.
comes
We don't
along.
use that one too much.
Not- I know. But if it comes along, you're not going to get and reap the rewards of that. So I think for me, and then as a side joke, I said when I was here 37 years ago, it wasn't the weeds that got me, because I grew grass in my front, and it was the doggone gophers that got me.
Yeah.
They're saboteurs.
Pestilence,
too.
absolutely. Yeah. He'll use whatever he can. Yeah.
In the message today, you talked about getting out of the boat. There was some of the music.
That was the song Oceans,
stepping
yeah.
out of the boat.
Yeah.
And that's what you've done to a lot of us here at this church, is you've helped us to step out of the boat and try to walk on the water. And it's been a blessing. And the same thing with your message with the mustard seed today. When I first came here, all I wanted to do was be in the back of the room.
Some years back. A ghost.
When I first came here, all I wanted to do, my comment was, I'm going to be a ghost in the back of the room. And I was the mustard seed, and you let me step out of the boat because you knew I had some
Potential.
Yeah.
Everyone makes a difference, am I right?
It's a blessing, and for the folks that aren't here today, they're thanking you too for the 20 years that you've been here, and thank you. It's a blessing.
Thank you. And in that song, it struck me, keep your eyes above the waves, clearly capturing Peter, who walked as he was watching Jesus, invited out of the boat, walking on the water, and then he looked at the wind and the waves. Keep your eyes above the waves. Are we there?
We're there.
We're there. All right, well, that brings us to the point of your offering. Your offering. Your first fruits offering. Giving the best you have. Not withholding because you think you want the blessing, but you want to take an end run around to avoid having